Hello, and welcome to Revenge Diaries. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more real-life inspired emotional stories. Today's story comes from a woman who was dismissed, disrespected, and nearly erased by her own family. But she didn't scream. She didn't fight back the way they expected. She simply listened, and then made one silent move that changed everything. She overheard her daughter-in-law say, "It's our house now," so she sold it out from under them. Now, let's begin. The walls in this house were never thick. I used to joke that I could hear a whisper from 3 rooms away, and yet, somehow, I'd never expected to hear that, especially from someone I had opened my doors and heart to. It started on a quiet Thursday afternoon. I had just finished folding the laundry, sheets still warm from the dryer, and was walking past the guest bedroom when I heard my new daughter-in-law, Brittany, speaking in the hallway with my son, Noah. "Once she's gone," she said, almost laughing, "we'll redesign everything. New kitchen, new floors. Knock down that awful fireplace she loves so much." My hand froze on the doorknob. I leaned closer, quietly. "It's our house now," she added, in that syrupy voice she used when she wanted to sound playful. "She's just holding it up." Noah didn't say anything at first. Then, with an uncomfortable laugh, he muttered, "Don't say that. Mom's still here." Brittany lowered her voice, but I still caught it. "Not for long." The hallway went quiet again, and I sat on the edge of my bed, the sheet still in my lap, the words burning into my ears. I wasn't supposed to hear that. But I had. They thought this home, my home, was already theirs. They thought I was in the way, an obstacle, a problem to be waited out. Let me take you back a bit. I've lived in this house for 38 years. My husband George and I raised 2 boys here. We planted that pear tree in the front yard when Noah was born. Every scratch on the banister, every uneven floorboard, every creaky stair, they hold memories. When George passed away, Noah moved back in to keep me company. At least, that's how he put it. And when he married Brittany earlier this year, I opened my home to her too. I cleared out a whole room so they could have their privacy. I even paid for half of their honeymoon. I welcomed her as family. But family doesn't talk about tearing down the fireplace while you're still alive in the next room. That night, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window in the living room. The same spot George and I used to sit together after long days, quietly watching the moon rise. And I thought, long and hard, not about revenge, not about anger, but about clarity. Brittany had made one thing crystal clear. She didn't see me as part of their life moving forward. And Noah, his silence spoke volumes. The next morning, I called my lawyer. "Good morning, Linda," he said, cheerful as ever. "Everything all right?" "Not exactly," I replied calmly. "I need to make some changes to my will." By 3 p.m. that day, my name was still on the deed, but not for long. Because I didn't just remove them from the will. I listed the house for sale. Privately, quietly, I contacted an agent I trusted from church and asked her to keep everything discreet. No signs, no online postings, only vetted buyers. When she asked me why, I told her simply, "Because they already think this house belongs to them. I need them to find out it doesn't, when it's too late to undo it." I kept things normal at home. I still made dinners. I still asked about their day. But inside, a slow, steady fire had lit up. This wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about preserving the dignity I had almost forgotten I was allowed to have. A week passed. Then 2. The house went into escrow faster than expected. A lovely retired couple from Vermont made an offer above asking. They were kind, respectful, and even said they'd keep the fireplace. Said it reminded them of their childhood home. I accepted immediately. Closing date? 2 weeks. That night, over dinner, Brittany casually said, "So I was thinking we could do light gray walls in the dining room, maybe knock down that weird divider into the kitchen?" Noah, chewing a forkful of pasta, nodded. "Yeah, we'll figure it out." I smiled gently. "Actually, there's something I've been meaning to tell you both." They looked up. "You'll need to find a new place to live. I sold the house." The forks hit the plates. "What?" Brittany blinked. "You... what?" Noah echoed, pale. "I sold the house," I said, sipping my water. "It closes in 2 weeks." You could have heard a pin drop. Then Brittany laughed, except it wasn't laughter. It was panic wrapped in disbelief. "You're joking." "I'm not." Noah leaned forward. "Mom, why would you do that?" "Because it isn't our house, and because I overheard what Brittany said. About me, about this place, about what would happen once I'm gone." Brittany opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "No need to lie. I was in the room. I heard it all." Their faces drained of color. I stood up, cleared the plates, and calmly walked to the sink. "You treated me like I was a placeholder. Now you'll understand that everything you stood on was never yours to begin with." The silence that followed my announcement was thick. Brittany's knuckles whitened around her fork, and Noah looked like he was trying to remember how to breathe. The kitchen, once filled with fake laughter and idle chatter, now felt like the inside of a courtroom waiting for the verdict to land. They weren't ready for it. But I was. I dried my hands on a dish towel and leaned gently against the counter. "You sold the house. Behind our backs?" Brittany finally managed, her voice cracking with disbelief. I nodded slowly. "Behind your backs?" "No, sweetheart, just without your input, which, legally speaking, I was never required to get." But you said we could live here?" Noah protested. "You said this was home." I looked at him for a long moment. "And you made it clear I was nothing more than temporary. Don't look so shocked now that I treated you the same." Noah stood up, pacing. "You could have just told us. We could have worked something out. You didn't have to blindside us." "And what would we have worked out?" I asked calmly. "Would we have planned how to knock down that ugly fireplace? Or maybe how to paint over every memory this house holds?" He opened his mouth to argue, but there was nothing to say, because he knew I was right. That night, I sat alone in the den, the same place where George used to read with a lamp on beside him and our boys played board games on rainy days. I ran my hand along the old bookshelf he built himself, each notch in the wood a reminder of the life we had. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had stood up for myself. Not as a mother, not as a widow, not as a placeholder in someone else's life. Just as me. The next few days passed in awkward limbo. Brittany stopped speaking to me entirely. She clanged dishes louder, slammed cabinets, and walked past me like I was invisible. Noah tried to make peace. A few soft apologies, empty reassurances, and promises to talk to Brittany. But I'd spent too many years being polite. Too many years pretending not to notice who smiled when I entered the room. and who rolled their eyes when I left it. No more pretending. One morning, I noticed Brittany scrolling through Zillow on her phone at the breakfast table, whispering furiously to Noah. "I'm not living in some two-bedroom rental like a college kid," she snapped. "Tell your mom to fix this." Noah just stared into his coffee. He was unraveling slowly, because deep down, he knew this wasn't something that could be fixed with flowers or a well-rehearsed apology. I had seen the truth behind their smiles. And now? So had they. Later that afternoon, Noah came into the garden where I was pruning roses. His voice was soft. "Mom, I wish we'd handled things differently." "So do I said, not looking up. He hesitated. "We didn't mean to hurt you. Brittany was just venting. She didn't think you'd hear." "That's the problem," I said, standing. "People say the truest things when they don't think you'll hear." He fell quiet, brushing his hand through his hair. "So what happens now?" "You and Brittany have 2 weeks to figure out your next step," I said firmly. "The new owners are taking possession on the 15th. I'll be gone by then. I assume you will too." That evening, I sat on the back porch and watched the sun dip behind the trees one last time. I thought about how I would miss this house, but not the tension that had come to live inside it. The walls didn't hold the same warmth they once did, and that wasn't because the house had changed. It was because I had finally seen what I'd been unwilling to face. I was not welcome in my own home anymore. So, I'd made sure they wouldn't be, either. The next day, the moving boxes arrived. I packed up only what I truly needed. Some photo albums, a few of George's old books, my favorite tea set, and the vintage clock from the fireplace mantel. Everything else would be left for the new family, a fresh start for someone who might actually appreciate it. By midweek, the real estate agent stopped by to drop off final documents. She smiled, warm and kind. "You sure you're okay with this, Linda?" "I've never been more sure of anything," I told her. This house deserved better than what it had become. And so did I. The night before the closing, I heard soft knocking on my bedroom door. It was Noah, alone. He stepped inside hesitantly, looking younger than he had in years. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." I nodded. "Thank you for saying that." He looked around the room. "This was never about the house, was it?" "No," I said quietly. "It was about respect." His eyes welled up. I didn't see what was happening. I didn't realize how Brittany's words, how my silence, made you feel. "It's not just about feelings, Noah. It's about action. And now, I've taken mine." As he left the room, I knew things might never be the same between us, but I also knew that I had reclaimed something precious. My voice, my value, my peace, and I wasn't letting it go again. The morning of the closing came like any other, but the air felt different, lighter, sharper. I woke before the sun, wrapped in the quiet peace that comes when you know a hard decision is finally behind you. I brewed a pot of chamomile tea and sat by the kitchen window for one last time. The garden beyond was bathed in soft golden light, the roses still opening from their nightly sleep. I had planted those roses the year George and I moved in, decades ago. They bloomed every spring, through marriage, through grief, through the messy parts of motherhood. They would bloom for someone else now, and I was at peace with that. At 9:15 a.m., the doorbell rang, a sharp, clear chime. I didn't rush to answer. I wanted to take one last look around. The living room, bare except for the rug and the fireplace mantel. The hallway still smelled faintly of wood polish and old photo frames. The staircase creaked like it always did, a final farewell in its own voice. I walked to the front door and opened it. 2 people stood there, Henry and Darlene Matthews, the couple buying the house. He wore a crisp navy blazer and held a thick envelope. She clutched a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, though I hadn't told her that. "Mrs. Randall," Darlene said warmly, "it's truly a beautiful home." "Not anymore," Brittany muttered behind me, her voice like poison. I hadn't even heard her come down the stairs. She was dressed in expensive loungewear, holding her phone like it was a weapon. Noah trailed behind, looking more apologetic than angry, the way he always did when his wife spoke first. I stepped aside to let the Matthews in. "Please, call me Linda. It's yours now." The paperwork was signed at the dining table, one of the few pieces of furniture left. Brittany hovered in the hallway, arms crossed, refusing to acknowledge the new owners. Darlene, ever the peacekeeper, tried to engage. "We're thinking of keeping the garden as is. It's got such a gentle feel to it." I smiled. "The roses like to be spoken to. Don't ask me why. It just works." Noah didn't say a word. He looked everywhere but at me. As the final page was signed, the keys were slid across the table to Henry, and with that, the transfer was complete. "Congratulations," I said softly, rising from the chair. Darlene placed the sunflowers in my arms. "Thank you for everything. We'll take care of this place." "I believe you will." Brittany stepped forward suddenly, eyes wide. "Wait, you can't just—" But I raised a hand calmly. "I can, and I did." Noah blinked. "Where are we supposed to go?" "You're married adults," I replied without cruelty. "Figure it out." Brittany was sputtering now. "We built our lives around this house." "No," I corrected gently. "You built your plans around my house, and now it's not yours." I turned to the Matthews, gave them one final handshake, and walked outside without looking back. My small car was already packed. I didn't need much, just the things that mattered. My wedding album, a few books, the quilt my grandmother made, and the deed to the small cottage on the lake that George and I bought in our early years but never moved into. That cottage would be home now. As I drove away, I looked once in the rearview mirror, not at the house, at the people standing stunned in the driveway, realizing they had lost something far more important than bricks and walls. They had lost their sense of entitlement, and I had gained something much bigger than property. I had gained freedom. 2 weeks later, the emails started. Noah wrote first. Subject: just checking in. "Hey, Mom, I know things got tense. I didn't handle it well. Brittany's been upset, but I think she realizes she went too far. Can we talk? Maybe meet for coffee?" I read it twice before closing my laptop. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even bitter. But I wasn't ready either. Brittany messaged next, in typical fashion. "Hope you're enjoying the lake house. Just so you know, Noah's been really stressed. You kind of pulled the rug out from under us." That was his childhood home. I stared at the message, feeling a strange mix of sadness and validation. She still didn't get it. She still thought it was about the house. The truth was, I missed my son, but I didn't miss the version of him that stood by while his wife disrespected me under my own roof. I didn't miss the silence, the side glances, the mom doesn't get it tone in Brittany's voice, the tension that wrapped around every dinner like a second napkin. At the lake house, Things were quiet, peaceful. The nights were colder, but I had blankets and time. I read books again. I planted herbs in small pots, and I found myself smiling without reason, for no one but me. On the first Sunday of the new month, I got a call. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. It was Darlene. "Hi, Linda. I hope I'm not bothering you." "Not at all," I said. "I just wanted to thank you again. The house is lovely. The neighbors have been so kind. And we found something tucked behind the old dresser upstairs." "Oh?" "A small envelope, addressed to whoever's next." "We weren't sure if it was meant for us?" I laughed softly. "Yes, it is." Inside that envelope was a short note I'd written after closing. "This house was built on love, not design. Keep it kind. Speak softly. Don't forget the ones who came before you." They promised they would, and somehow that brought me more closure than any apology ever could. Weeks passed. The lake cottage, old, creaky, but mine, had quickly become my sanctuary. Every morning, I brewed tea by the small window that overlooked the still water. I could see the sun rising through the mist, and for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. I had no television, no Brittany's loud voice on speakerphone, no slammed cabinets, no sighs of annoyance from across the table when I asked about their day. Just peace, and the quiet sound of my own heart healing. Then, one Thursday afternoon, there was a knock at the door. I opened it slowly, and there they were, Noah and Brittany. He looked tired, pale even, a man who hadn't slept well. His eyes flicked around the porch like it was unfamiliar territory. Brittany, on the other hand, stood tall, arms crossed, expensive sunglasses pushed onto her head, heels totally inappropriate for the gravel path leading to my door. She didn't say hello. Instead, she sighed and said, "Can we come in?" I stepped aside, not because I wanted to, but because part of me still believed in grace, in giving people a chance to be better than they were. Inside, I poured tea. The same way I used to, but this time, I didn't ask if they wanted sugar or lemon. I just set the cups down. Brittany took a small sip and grimaced. "No oat milk?" I said nothing. Noah cleared his throat awkwardly. "Mom, we came to talk." "I figured," I replied calmly. He glanced at Brittany, who nodded as if giving him permission to continue. "I miss you," he said finally. I stayed quiet. I miss how things were, and I know we made mistakes. I let things slide that I shouldn't have. I should have stood up for you, even if it meant causing tension. I looked at him then, long and hard. "That's true," I said softly. "You should have." Brittany huffed. "Okay, look, we didn't come here for a guilt trip. The point is, we need somewhere to stay. Our lease is up next month, and prices are outrageous. We've looked, and it just doesn't make sense financially." She looked around the cottage with clear disdain. "This place is small, but maybe—" I stopped her with a raised hand. "This isn't a discussion about moving in." Noah sat forward. "Mom, come on. It's just temporary. You have this whole place to yourself. You don't even need all this space." I stood up, and just like that, the warmth I had extended by opening my door began to fade. "Let me tell you what space I do need," I said. "I need space where I'm not ridiculed behind closed doors. I need space where I'm not treated like an obligation or a decoration to be hidden during parties." Brittany rolled her eyes. "We apologized." "No," I said. "You didn't. You showed up here because you're out of options. You didn't come to make peace. You came to make a request." Noah's voice cracked. "It's just for a few months. Please." I sat back down. Then I reached into the side drawer and pulled out an envelope. It was thick, neatly sealed. I slid it across the table to Noah. "What's this?" he asked, hesitant. "Open it." He did. Inside was a copy of the new will, the updated one, the one that had removed both their names completely. Instead, the beneficiary was a local women's shelter. Brittany's face went white. "What the hell is this?" I met her eyes. "This is what happens when you treat people like they're disposable. You see, I built a life, Brittany. A full one. I paid for this house, that house, and everything your husband grew up with. I was going to leave it all behind. I wanted to pass it down. But I will not reward cruelty." Noah's hands trembled slightly as he put the papers down. His voice was barely a whisper. "You cut us out completely? I gave you everything, for years. Support, love, a home. All I ever asked for in return was kindness." Brittany stood up so fast her chair screeched. "This is manipulation. You're punishing us for one stupid comment." "One?" I asked, standing too. "Or the dozens of times you belittled me in my own home? The smirks, the dismissals, the fact that you sat in a living room I paid for and whispered about redesigning it after I was gone? I heard you, Brittany. Every word." She didn't respond. She couldn't, because she hadn't expected me to have a voice. Not really. I walked to the door and opened it. "This conversation is over." Noah looked at me like he wanted to say more. Maybe he did. But he walked out silently. Brittany followed, clutching her bag like it was some kind of shield. Before she stepped off the porch, she turned back. "You'll regret this." I smiled. "No, dear, you will." And I closed the door. Inside, I stood alone for a long time, but I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt powerful, not because I had rejected them, but because I had finally chosen me. My peace, my future, my dignity. They would remember this visit, and I would never need to relive it. The day after Noah and Brittany left the cottage, the quiet returned. Not the kind of silence that comes from loss, but the kind that comes after you've finally told your truth. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. I had no regrets, only clarity. And peace? That peace was finally mine. A few days later, I received an invitation in the mail. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock, expensive, pretentious. The kind Brittany would choose. It was for their baby shower. "Join us as we celebrate Baby Parker. Gifts welcome. Registry enclosed." I laughed out loud, not from bitterness, but genuine disbelief. They had cut me out emotionally, disrespected me endlessly, and tried to milk what was left by inviting me to a party. With a registry. I stared at the card, shaking my head slowly. Then I picked up a pen and wrote a note of my own. The day of the baby shower arrived. Noah's cousin Sarah, one of the few relatives who still checked in on me, had invited me to a separate lunch gathering that day. We met at a small cafe downtown, away from the noise. She leaned in over her latte, her eyes wide with gossip. "Aunt Linda, I swear, the baby shower, it's a disaster." I blinked. "Oh?" Sarah nodded. "They booked some rooftop place downtown, but the weather turned. Wind, rain, everything's flying, and to top it off, Brittany is furious because someone bought the entire venue right out from under them." I sipped my tea, careful not to smile too obviously. Sarah tilted her head. "You didn't—" I didn't answer, But my silence was louder than any confession. You see, 3 days before the event, I had reached out to the venue manager. "Do you have a cancellation policy?" I asked. He told me that if a full buyout was made in cash, even a previously booked date could be transferred. So I did. Not to throw a party, just to make a point. They threw me out of the life I built. Now I was simply returning the favor. Later that week, Noah called again. Voicemail only. "Mom, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this isn't helping. You're isolating yourself." Was I? I didn't feel isolated. I felt healed. I spent mornings planting wildflowers along the edge of the lake. I baked bread from scratch. I read books that had waited on shelves for too long. And every evening, I lit a single candle on the porch and watched the light dance on the water. Solitude, I realized, was only painful when you didn't choose it. When you did, it was freedom. Then one evening, I received a knock. It was Noah, alone. He looked smaller, not physically, but something in his shoulders, in the way his eyes darted to the floor. "Can I come in?" he asked. I opened the door wider. He walked in slowly, looking around the cottage like it held answers. "I didn't know you remembered how to find this place," I said softly. He gave a sad smile. "Dad brought me here once, when I was 12. We went fishing." I remembered. George had come home that day with sunburned arms and a boy who wouldn't stop talking about catching a trout with a cheese stick. Noah sat at the table without waiting for an invitation. I poured him some tea. He took a sip and said nothing for a long moment. Then, finally, "She didn't mean it, you know, Brittany, what she said." I met his eyes. "She said it more than once. That kind of meanness doesn't come from nowhere." He nodded. "You're right, and I let it happen." He ran a hand through his hair. I kept thinking I was keeping the peace, but I was just avoiding the fight. I stayed silent, because he needed to say it, all of it. "I lost my compass, Mom," he continued. "Somewhere along the way, I forgot who raised me, who held everything together, who kept us afloat when Dad got sick. I let Brittany convince me you were in the way." My throat tightened. "You weren't," he said, voice breaking. "You never were." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years, and beneath the tiredness, I saw my boy again. The one who used to bring me dandelions and apologize when he broke my teacups, pretending they were superhero shields. "I'm not asking you to fix everything," he said. I miss you, and I'd like to start over, on your terms." I didn't reply right away. I stood up, walked to the drawer, and pulled out a small box. Inside was a key. Not to the house I sold, not to his old bedroom, but to the guest cabin behind my lake cottage. "I'm not ready to fix everything," I said, "but I am willing to try." I handed him the key. "This is yours. If you want to visit, alone, without entitlement, without expectations, just come as you are." He took it in both hands like it was more than metal, like it was hope. As he stood to leave, he stopped at the door. "I told Brittany I wouldn't bring her. She's not ready, but I am." I nodded. He stepped out into the night and paused. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled. I didn't. I just gave up trying to explain what I deserved. That night, I lit my porch candle like always. But this time, it flickered beside a second one, on the window of the guest cabin down the path, a quiet symbol, not of reconciliation, but of possibility. The days that followed Noah's visit felt lighter. He didn't move into the guest cabin permanently, just visited on weekends. Sometimes we barely spoke, sitting in silence on the porch, watching the lake ripple in the breeze. Other times, he helped in the garden or insisted on cooking breakfast like he used to with his father. It was slow, healing, not perfect, but real. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a footnote in someone else's story. I was writing my own. One Friday evening, I heard a car crunch up the gravel path. I stepped out, tea mug in hand. Brittany. Of course. She stepped out in stilettos again, ridiculous as always. Her expensive coat wrapped tight even though it was a warm spring night. Her hair was too perfect for a lake visit, and her expression? Cold. She didn't wait for me to greet her. You've made your point. I raised an eyebrow. This little exile act, cutting us out, humiliating us at the baby shower, it's enough. I didn't say a word. She walked past me and stood at the edge of the porch, her hands on her hips. You think this makes you powerful? Petty revenge on your own family? Brittany, I said gently, you are not my family. Noah is. Her mouth twitched, but she composed herself quickly. He's only here because I told him to make peace. I laughed, softly. That's where you're wrong. He's here in spite of you. Her eyes narrowed. You think he's going to choose you over me? Over his child? I didn't flinch. I think for once, he's realizing he doesn't have to choose at all. He just has to stop enabling cruelty. She stared at me, her lips pressed tight, and for a second, I saw fear behind the anger. That's what it was. Fear. Because deep down, Brittany knew I had stopped being the doormat, and people like her, they need someone beneath them to feel tall. She stepped closer. What do you want, Linda? Money? An apology? A written confession? I leaned against the railing. Calm. Still. I want nothing. That's not true. It is, I said. I no longer want what can't be given freely. I won't beg for kindness. I won't shrink myself to fit your comfort. She scoffed. Then this ends now. I tilted my head. You don't control how this ends. And I turned and walked back inside. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I simply left her standing there, face burning in the golden evening sun, with no audience to applaud her performance. Later, Noah returned from the town market, holding groceries and looking confused when I told him she'd come. I didn't know, he said. I believe you, I said. And I did, because for the first time, he wasn't making excuses for her. He was seeing her clearly. Finally. 2 weeks passed. I got a letter in the mail, certified. It was from Brittany's lawyer. A list of demands: access to the original house, a portion of shared marital property, an attempt to claw back what she thought she was entitled to. I read it once, calmly folded it, and set it on my desk beside an envelope already addressed to my attorney. No anger, just paperwork, because the moment I took my name off the will and listed the house for sale, I had already made peace with what I was letting go. But the story didn't end there. Because a week later, the new homeowner arrived. Her name was Clara, a lovely woman in her 50s who'd recently sold a tech firm and wanted to retire in peace. She fell in love with the house the moment she saw it online. I sold it to her below market price, not because I needed the money, but because I wanted someone kind to live in it. We met for coffee the day she moved in. I heard from the realtor that the previous residents weren't too happy. She laughed. Oh, they'll survive, I said with a small smile. She tilted her head. You speak like a woman who's reclaimed something. I have, I replied. You're home? I shook my head. Myself. A few days later, Clara texted me a photo. A picture of Brittany standing outside the gates of the house, yelling at the security intercom. Apparently, Clara had installed a new system and informed Brittany and Noah that any further contact would be considered trespassing. In the photo, Brittany's mouth was open mid-scream. Her nails clutched a designer bag. And behind her, Noah just looked tired. Clara had captioned it, "Guess your ghost still haunts this place. Hope she finds peace." I chuckled to myself and deleted the photo, not out of spite, out of closure. Because some battles don't need to be won loudly. Some victories are silent, private, sacred. That weekend, Noah showed up with a folded piece of paper, a birth announcement. A little girl, her name was Mia. He handed it to me without a word. I ran my fingers over the tiny printed name. A pang hit my chest, not of regret, but of memory. I thought of the day I brought Noah home, the smell of baby powder, the sleepless nights, the way his tiny hand would clutch my finger like he owned the world. She's beautiful, I said. Noah nodded. I'd like you to meet her when you're ready. I will be, I said, when her mother is ready to learn what love really looks like. Noah blinked fast. He didn't argue. He just nodded. We stood quietly on the porch again that night, 2 candles flickering. Mine and his. And somewhere far away, in a house that no longer belonged to her, Brittany screamed into the silence, powerless in a way she had never imagined. A month passed. Spring had fully arrived. The cottage garden had exploded into wild color, the trees heavy with blossoms, and each day felt like a new page turned gently by the breeze. I didn't hear from Brittany, but Noah? He came often, always respectful, always helping quietly. We didn't talk about the past anymore. We simply focused on what could still be saved. He had started calling me Mom again, not Ma or her. That alone felt like the most priceless gift. But what came next was something I never expected. It was a Sunday afternoon. I had just returned from the farmer's market when I noticed something on the front porch, resting carefully on my old rocking chair. A cream-colored envelope. No stamp. No name. I opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter in tight, elegant script. It was from Brittany. Linda, I know I don't have the right to write this, but I'm doing it anyway. Not for forgiveness. I won't ask for what I haven't earned. I said cruel things. I used Noah as a shield. I mocked you because I didn't know you. And the truth is, I was threatened by how strong you were. When I told him I wanted to redesign the house, I wasn't talking about furniture. I was trying to erase your memory from the walls. I see that now, and I regret it more than you know. You've shown me what real dignity looks like. Quiet power. Boundaries that don't need yelling to be heard. You taught Noah to be the kind of man who shows up. And now I see it every time he holds our daughter. I'm not asking you to accept me, but I hope someday Mia gets to know you. Because every girl needs someone strong to show her what strength really means. If you ever decide you can forgive me, I'll be here. With humility, Brittany. I sat down slowly, not because I was overwhelmed, but because something in me softened. Her words weren't perfect, but they were honest. At least, they felt that way. For the first time since she entered my life, she didn't try to manipulate or perform. She simply told the truth, and that mattered more than she knew. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I folded the letter gently and placed it in a small wooden box where I kept things worth remembering. Old photos, my late husband's fishing license, a dried flower from my wedding bouquet. This letter would stay there too. Not because I was holding on to the past, but because I was honoring the shift. Later that week, I received a text from Noah. She didn't know I saw her leave the letter. She cried all the way to the car. I typed back, "People change when they're ready, not when we demand it." He replied with a single heart emoji. That was enough. The following Saturday, Noah arrived with Mia. I heard her before I saw her, a soft cooing, the kind that makes the air itself feel lighter. He carried her in a pale yellow blanket, her tiny face nestled against his chest. "Is it okay?" he asked gently. I nodded, and just like that, I held my granddaughter for the first time. She blinked up at me with wide, curious eyes, her hand twitching in sleep. "She has your eyes," Noah said. I smiled. "She has your heart." He laughed softly, brushing her cheek. "She's going to be better than both of us." I hope so. We sat in the garden that day. I fed Mia her bottle while Noah trimmed the hedge and joked about planting peach trees. For a moment, I forgot about lawyers and houses and pain. All that remained was possibility. Before they left, he looked at me carefully. "She asked if she could come too next time." I met his eyes. "Not yet," I said, "but soon." He nodded. No protest. He understood. The next month, I made a choice. I contacted my lawyer. I rewrote my will. This time, it was simpler. I left the lake cottage to Mia. Only Mia. No middlemen, no Brittany, no loopholes. Just a trust in her name, locked until she turned 25, with one clause. She had to plant something in the garden every year. A tradition. A memory. A lesson in patience and growth. Because real inheritance isn't just wealth, it's wisdom. That evening, I wrote a letter of my own. It would be kept sealed until she turned 25. It read, "Dear Mia, you won't remember my face, but I hope the soil remembers your hands. I hope the lake remembers your laughter. I hope this house teaches you what your father once forgot. That love is not earned through noise, but felt in silence. You are not just heir to a cottage. You are heir to everything that matters. Strength, dignity, and the quiet kind of courage that rebuilds broken stories. Love, Grandma Linda." I folded the letter, sealed it, and placed it in the same wooden box. Then, I went to the garden, planted a new rose bush. Mia's rose, I called it, deep pink, fierce, beautiful. A reminder that from the thorns of rejection, something lasting can still bloom.